Hey everybody, it's been a long time since I've uploaded anything from World of Tanks. I've barely really played since early 2015, combination of reasons. My internet at the time was pretty awful. I had pretty serious packet loss. I was pulling like 320 milliseconds ping even to NA East. Now the central server's in Chicago, it's even worse somehow. Kind of bounce between 250 and 280 now, which is, you know, it's not as bad, but it's still not as good as it used to be on US West. Interesting new bug, the replay feature fucks with your crosshair settings. Anyway, since I last played, Wargaming did some things I don't approve of with the tech tree. I'm not going to go into that in this video. I want to do that in a separate piece. I just don't have the time to do it now. But in any case, one of the things they did that I don't like involves one of my favourite tanks in the game, the Object 430, and what they did was knock it down to tier 9 and give it a D25T, albeit one with better ammo, and then replace it with this thing at tier 10, the Object 430U, which has really good armour for a medium tank, although it is slab-sided, and it has an M62, so it's basically a Soviet 121, and now the Object 430 is a Soviet Wheezy 120, although it's worse than the Wheezy 120 in the vast majority of parameters as far as the weapons go. It's got better armor, obviously, and better gun compression. Now, like I said, I want to do a separate video on why I think this is a bad change and why I think it's completely unnecessary. For now, I just want to focus on this match. And I'm kind of getting to grips with a couple things here. I'm getting to grips with a new tank, although it does play like a 121. I haven't played the 121 very much, and certainly not recently. And Erlenberg has completely changed. For the better, in fact, it's actually kind of playable now. Old habits die hard, so I just rush for the castle and try and establish a good position here to try and prevent the enemy really pushing out in that south end. You don't have nearly as much elevation in the castle anymore, and you can't be shot across the map so easily, so it doesn't seem like it's quite as strong of a position as it used to be, but at the same time you're not quite as vulnerable to snipers across the river on the opposite ridgeline. There's nothing really going on here, so I kind of poke around. I just want to see if I can get some hits on that object or the pattern. But this thing's gun handling is not great, like the 121. It's not awful, and the 430s wasn't really the best to begin with, but with a fast-firing 100mm gun with very high pen, you can get away with having poor accuracy and bad bloom. With a slower-firing 122 with decent pen but not quite as good, you can't really get away with that as much. Now you'll notice the markers here are showing percentage of hit points. That is because the replay system resets all your settings. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pause this right here, and I'm going to fix that because it's really irritating me. There we go. The action seems to be happening around the center of town, and we don't really have a lot here to hold it. I also see an opportunity in that all of these enemy tanks seem to be preoccupied with the Wheezy 132 and the STA to their immediate south. Sure enough, I'm going to roll out and put a shot right into the back of that Scorpion, followed by a quick shot through the front of the Marine. T-34 gets one on the side. Down goes the Scorpion to the Wheezy 132, who's doing quite a good job tying down the enemy there. Put a big hit into that T-34. Now he's in a really bad position here, and he is now dead. Lorraine bounces off this thing's thick armor. It has 300mm on that turret front. However, the turret front isn't as sharply raked back as the 430s. It's not as steeply sloped, so you do need the extra thickness a little. I just give the Lorraine the slip. There's no reason to get into a snipe off with him, especially when my gun just doesn't have the handling. However, this heavy tank here, this 257, isn't really paying attention to me, and I'm able to sneak in behind him and put a quick shot in, followed by another which burns him down. Why isn't he carrying a fire extinguisher? Anyone's guess. try and squeeze in here and get a cheeky shot of this Lorraine. The wrecks are making it a little difficult, but I can get through. Unfortunately, I kind of rush my shot here and don't realise that the debris in front of me is just too high, and that catches my shot. Doesn't matter. The Lorraine is dealt with handily by the defender over there, and I can refocus my attention elsewhere. So we've got pretty good for hit points so far. You know, I've got plenty to spare. That object is gone. Our teammates in the south are pretty dire on hit points, but I'm now in a perfect position to help them out and put some pain on both this 103 and the Fatten that's down there. Unfortunately, I whiffed that shot on the Fatten really badly, but the defender has moved in and parked behind me, and so he's just going to fire over my shoulder, which is good. When I'm reloading, he's firing, and vice versa. The 103 goes down, and the Fatten is about to get his. Unfortunately, it is a difficult shot, but I'm able to pull it off. We save our two teammates down in the bottom left corner there, although they are very, very low on health, and one of them, both of them in fact, are then immediately taken out. One by Artie and the other from a sniping IS-3 right here. Now I'm looking for a cupola shot here, but it is difficult on an IS-3, even at close range. He's able to pop my gunner, but he doesn't want this fight, and really I can quite comfortably push right in on him. He might get another shot in, but it's likely to bounce. This thing's armor is legitimately that good. You can push tier 8 heavies without much concern. I'm able to cross the river here. Quite a nice little river crossing we've got there. Seems they've actually made wet textures for the tanks, which is something interesting. The game certainly looks quite nice now. If only it didn't crash 3 times every match, and you know, the puppies weren't as they always have been. This cheeky little Udes puts in a shot, but I put one right back. There's an AMX 13105 here. He's taking shots at me. He's not likely to pen, and I'm able to RNG one back at him. The changes that were made in 8.6 to improve gun accuracy within the aim circle have, I am told, been undone. So we're now back to old-timey World of Tanks, where basically the meta is to just snapshot because aiming is a waste of time. And so far my experience in the Object 430U, which I nearly just called a 121, has pretty much confirmed that. As long as it's within the circle, just snapshot. There's no point waiting. As soon as that circle closes, just pull the trigger. Now we've got an E75 here who's not paying attention. He's tied down by this Skoda, and I'm able to exploit that quite handily. Unfortunately, the rest of our team is just throwing their tanks away, feeding them one at a time into that line of tank destroyers and a light tank up on that opposite ridge. I'm able to take down that E75 without too much bother. I did take a shot there from one of the TDs. Now this is where I make a mistake. I think I'll cross the river and get under their guns. Unfortunately for me, that didn't work out so well. I also didn't notice at this point my gun had been damaged, and you'll see that it takes me quite a long time to realise that and fix it. Now the AMX has actually relocated into that patch of trees where I'm looking right now. If he hadn't done that and got a shot into my side, I probably would have been fine. Could have carried this game, could have won it for us. So there's a spoiler there, we lose. Surprise. Now he's in behind a lot of foliage as well as in a patch of low ground there. I can't push him to flush him out. I'm hoping that he won't park in that bush and just pop me as soon as I'm lit. I'm playing a dangerous game here. I'm moving. That does decrease my camo value, but I'm operating on the assumption he has either optics or binoculars and is going to see me anyway, and I'd rather be throwing his aim off than sitting there hoping that he just doesn't see me. I was expecting the Skoda to push in and flush him out. This guy is nearly full health, 76% health. That's a lot of hit points to deal with a single light tank. But he doesn't. He just rolls up and stops. Now either he had no sense of object permanence and didn't even register the fact that there was an AMX next to him, because I'm fairly certain that by this point it still hadn't moved, or he thinks it's less of a priority than those TDs. To be fair, the TDs are a problem. You can see him firing at them there, but the real problem here was the AMX. You know, a pair of entrenched Swedish tank destroyers on a ridgeline, yeah, whatever. You know, they're a tough nut to crack, but you can do it, whereas a very mobile light tank with a gun that's capable of putting out quite a bit of damage against a one-shottable medium and a guy that has no situational awareness, evidently, that's a big problem. You can see here he's finally started pushing. He's confirmed that the AMX has by now moved, no doubt bored of waiting for someone to push him. So I flipped my tank around to put the armoured face towards the southwest, which is the direction I expect to be pushed from. I'm expecting the enemy to push in from the town in front of me. I had considered the possibility they'd actually cross the river and pop me from the other side. I was just hoping that they wouldn't do it. Unfortunately, that's exactly what ends up happening. So for the rest of the match here, you'll see me tucked in behind this house, just waiting to see if one of those TDs will push me or if the AMX will try and rush me. If they had, they probably would have got me anyway. I was very low on health and they couldn't have missed at that range, but given the circumstances I was presented with, there wasn't really a whole lot I could do. This Skoda was just refusing to be useful, and I couldn't really push out. And there it goes, from across the map. As far as playstyle goes, it's very much like a 1-2-1, just with better armor. The gun handling is roughly equivalent to the 101. It's not significantly worse than the 430 with the U8 TS 100mm gun, but it's not good either. So ultimately, this was my second match in this tank, by the way, so not difficult to get used to, I suppose, especially if you have a background playing a lot of Chinese mediums. For instance, I played the ever-living shit out of my Wheezy 120, so I'm quite used to having a high alpha, low DP or a low rate of fire gun. It is low DPM compared to its stablemates. The other tier 10 mediums, the vast majority of them have better DPM than this, some of them significantly. The old Object 430 had extremely high DPM, and you will certainly miss it here. And to be quite frank, on a tier 10 medium, especially one with good armor like this and decent mobility, I prefer the high rate of fire, middling alpha, high pen gun of the old 430 and the T62A and the 140. Now, I may as well actually cover these tanks here, and I'll go into the other tech tree issue in a separate video. What happened was, apparently Wargaming realized not many people played the Object 430. They decided because it wasn't popular, they had to do something to make it popular, and they decided that it was too similar to the other mediums. You know, the word clone was used, and if they gave it a unique character, we'll come back to this, it would make it more interesting and pubbies would actually play it. Now, a couple problems with that logic. First of all, the reason the 430 wasn't played isn't because it was exactly the same as the other two, because it's not. The T62A was your generalist. It had solid turret armor, its gun handling was good, it was just a jack of all trades. The Object 140 was very well adapted to sniping and firing on the move. It was a little less solid in the turret than the T62 was, although it had a better hull. The two of them, if anything, are the ones that should be called clones, although even they have differences. The Object 430, on the other hand, had quite considerably superior armor to both of them. The turret on the 430 wasn't as thick on paper, but in practice the angles and just the way that the thing tends to be positioned makes it quite hard to pen. You did have that weak turret roof, but the T62 at close range can be sniped through the cupola, so it's not really that big of a deal. So the 430 is much squatter. It has the best, or had, past tense, I'm talking about the old tier 10 430, it had the best camouflage in tier of any tank, and that was not changed until they added the new tier 10 light tanks. Before that, the 430 was the undisputed king of stealth at tier 10. In every respect, it was the hardest to spot while stationary, it was the hardest to spot while moving, and I believe it was one of the hardest to spot after firing its gun as well. It was just an incredibly sneaky tank. The squat size made it very difficult to hit, especially when it was bucketing over rough terrain at high speed. And as I said, it was quite solidly armoured, and it had that cheeky layout with the little armoured shoulders. They weren't very thick, but they were quite steeply sloped, and you'd be able to bait people into shooting them at ridiculous angles. They could be overmatched, but against other mediums in particular, they were very, very good for baiting shots around corners. You also had the angled side plates. So, it's an assault tank. It's not the most agile, but it doesn't need to be. It's the smallest, hardest to hit, most or best protected overall. In general, you know, it doesn't have the best turret armor, but it's the best protected in general. The least likely to be penned when shot at when rushing across an open field. And it had the highest DPM after the first buff. Now, originally, the 430 had lower DPM, and then maybe you could make a case that there wasn't anything to make it interesting aside from its armor and its camo, which is still actually quite a bit. Yeah, so Wargaming went and buffed it, and they gave it extremely high DPM. I believe for quite a long time it was the highest DPM in tier. Suddenly, you had the best DPM, the best camouflage, the best armor. You had 3 unique traits that the 430 had, which neither of the other 2 tier 10 Soviet mediums had, and none of the other mediums could really compete with either. So it was, as far as I'm concerned, a unique tank. Plus, the quick-firing gun was well adapted to the fact that the 430's gun handling was quite poor. It didn't have the stationary accuracy or the aim time of either of the other 2, and its bloom was fucking atrocious, both on turret and tracks. So you had quite poor accuracy while actually on the assault. Rather than stopping to fire, though, you could just keep firing while driving, because you had a high rate of fire and good pen on the gun, so as long as one of your shells eventually found the enemy tank, you were sweet. That's, you know, it was a good setup, and even if you got in close, you didn't have the alpha to scare people off, but you had the DPM to perma-track them, or to consistently peck away at their armor as you drive circles around them. You know, it meshed together beautifully. The old Object 430 was, in my opinion, one of the most finely tuned killing machines in this game. It was really something special, and the reason I think you didn't see so many people play it was, 1, a lack of appreciation for exactly what it was. A lot of people, if they even look at the stats of a tank, they'll only look at the hard stats that are displayed in game. They won't look into things like soft stats, you know, traction, or how the gun behaves, like bloom values, for instance. The actual numerical bloom values they won't look into. The sort of more in-depth stuff. And let me tell you, an Object 430 with a 4-skill crew, with trained recon and camouflage skills, with optics, was just broken at times. It was broken. I am certainly not the best player on the server, least of all now. I never was the best player on the server. I was really not even close. But because I learnt to use the tank and adapted myself to it, I could do some pretty disgusting things with it. And consistently, the only other players I saw playing the 430 with any degree of regularity were very good players, or players who had, you know, an equivalent level of skill to me, but were specialized in that tank, like I was. And so that's the thing. The 430 players, there might not have been many of them, but they were all very, very good at what they did. And you also had the problem of, when the 430 first came out, there was a lot of bullshit. Garbad was involved in that, I think, and there were a couple of others. Things like, oh, it only has 1 degree of gun depression, while neglecting to mention that's over a very, very narrow arc, looking backwards over its engine deck, basically your 2 rear quarters. Everywhere else, 5 degrees, which is standard for a Soviet medium at tier 10. Things like that, and you know, back when it did have a low DPM, people whinged about that. You could make it work, but certainly was a much better tank after they buffed its DPM. And again, another thing with that high pen, high rate of fire gun is you could permatrack people like nothing else. You could basically just keep a tank locked down in the open for as long as you wanted. The gun was accurate enough to repeatedly hit that track. That guy wasn't going anywhere except back to his garage once your puppies finally shot at him. Like, there was no way to counter it. If they drop repair, you just fire again. You could fire so quickly that even if they drop repair, they just couldn't get away from you. It was an excellent all-round medium tank. Really one of the best. Honestly, I'm biased because I like the tank, but it was one of the best. And it was one of the best looking, and you know, if you've watched any of my videos, you know I care very deeply about tank aesthetics. Now, what they replaced it with, this thing, first impressions, it's okay. It's not bad. It's fun even, but it's not my 430, and I miss my 430. It's a stronger 121. The 121 wasn't a bad tank to begin with. It probably didn't need an armor buff. This thing has much stronger armor and an equivalent gun and equivalent mobility, and is squat like the 430 is. It's quite good. Is it too good? I don't know. I'll have to play more games with it. I've heard from other goons that they reckon it's pretty close to being broken, but again, I don't have the experience to make that judgment. However, when I come back in after a long break and pull a, what is this, 5,000 damage game, it does make me wonder. The 430 itself, as I said, has been busted down to tier 9. It's kept its armor, it's kept its mobility, it's kept everything except its gun. The gun has been replaced. It's now a improved ammunition D25T, stabilized, so it's not completely awful, but it has really quite bad gun handling, on par with the Wheezy 120. The Wheezy 120's gun handling is pretty abysmal, and the only reason it's acceptable is because you have such a massive gun on a really nimble medium. On the 430, yeah, it's acceptable. Is it competitive at tier 9? I reckon it's very good at tier 9, but it's not the same tank, and I don't think it's as fun to play, because yeah, you get a good giggle out of it the first time you smack someone in the face for a huge amount of damage. You know, everyone does, but there's a couple of major shortcomings. First of all, the D25T, of course, has lower alpha, 390, as opposed to 440 on the M62 or the Wheezy 120's 122mm gun. So really, you're doing equivalent alpha to a Centurion, for instance, or a Fatten, with lower DPM than either of them. Significantly lower DPM than either of them. We're talking 2800 with a 4-skill crew and a rammer. 2800 DPM is what you'll get out of an Object 416 with a fairly green crew and a rammer, and that's a tier 8. 2700 DPM is the kind of DPM where people complain this isn't viable at tier 9 or this isn't viable at tier 10. That's the kind of DPM that gets tanks busted down to tier 8 premium and something else put in their place. It's not bad, you can make it work. You know, with a gun that big, you can peek and poke. You couldn't really do that with the old gun. You had to expose yourself a lot more to utilize that high DPM, but the whole tank was built around that. Now you're wasting your tank, to be quite honest. Yeah, it's really bouncy and it's really easy to hide, and it's fairly agile, but you're just doing what a heavy should do. You're poking in and out behind buildings or popping in and out of bushes. Why? You're wasting your tank. It's a waste of mobility, it's a waste of concealment, it's just a waste of a medium. It's competitive, it's strong even in the hands of a good player, but it's not what it used to be. It's not really as fun. And the Wheezy 120, again, You could apply the same arguments to that. It's a waste of a medium tank, a heavy should be doing this, but you've got to remember the Wheezy 120 as a tier 9 medium tank with good mobility had 440 alpha. Now that is a fair trade-off, because you can really just get up and completely murder somebody with that. 390? No, it's not enough to write home about. 390 really isn't enough to care about. So I don't think that was a good trade at all. I would have preferred it to keep the U8 TS, even if they'd nerfed its DPM when they down tiered it, even if they'd say given it different ammo, taken away its APCR maybe and given it lower pen AP. The D25T it actually has better pen than either the, well, should say better pen than the D10 T2S or the D54. So it's got better pen than the other tier 9 Soviet medium guns, but it's still not really that great. You know, tier 9 is the tier where Centurions start popping up with their tier 9 guns that pen everything. E50s, the E50 has roughly equivalent pen from what I recall, but the E50 has much stronger armor in general. It's just not a fair trade. I would have preferred to keep the old 430, and I don't think this was necessary. So in trying to make the tank a bit more give it a bit more character, make it more interesting to the pubbies, you know, make people want to play it, they've taken away the Object 430 and they've given us a Soviet Wheezy 120 but worse, and a Soviet 121. If you look at the Object 430U, it's even a bit elongated compared to the 430, the same way the 121's elongated compared to the Wheezy 120. It's... Why? It wasn't necessary. Like, who asked for this? I certainly didn't. I want my old fucking 430 back. That thing was a riot. I mean, will I keep playing it? Yeah, sure. I like the tank. It's a nice looking tank. This thing, on the other hand, is an ugly piece of shit. Hideous looking thing. But it's not going to hit the same spot, you know. I'm probably going to go back to mostly playing the Centurion if I get back into the game. And I'll probably play the Wheezy 120 a lot more than I play it, just because the Wheezy 120 is better at doing what the 430 is now supposed to do. The Wheezy 120 is fully specialized into that role, whereas the 430 was a tank fully specialized into another role, where Wargaming just said, oh no, actually, let's try and shoehorn it into this one. And they've done a shit half-assed job of it, if you ask me. It doesn't belong there. It doesn't need a 122mm gun. See, even if they put in the separate gun choice, if they'd made the D10 T2S a gun choice, so you could roll the same gun as the T54, you know, with high DPM, I would have taken that. I would have gladly taken that over the 122. It's just not right. Not right. Anyway, before I waffle on too much longer, or fill up my hard drive with this, I think I'll just call it there. I want to talk about the changes to the TDs as well, but again, I'll do that in a separate video. This isn't the place for it, and I've got quite a few words to say on that too, as well as the changes to the economy, various other things like that. Fodder for another day. Thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of this. Feel free to chime in the comments if you've got an opinion of your own on the whole Object 430 situation. From a cursory glance at the forums, there was a lot of people coming from my end of the thing, where they thought it was completely unnecessary and Wargaming pandering to the wrong crowd, and in the wrong manner at that. But, you know, if somebody has a different opinion on it, or a different take on it, I'm interested to hear it. I know that you can make it work, but I mean, I can make it work. I just preferred the old way. Actually, that's one more thing before I cut this. I almost forgot. One of the reasons that Wargaming also added, or certainly that pubbies were alluding to, being part of the driving force behind it, is a desire to make the experience across each branch of the Soviet medium line more uniform. And so the idea was, oh, you know, each tank in a particular branch should have the same general characteristics as the one before it. Now, I don't think I need to tell any of you that is not a thing in World of Tanks. Most tech trees, most branches of most tech trees, there's either not a lot of consistency or there's none. Probably the most consistent line in the game would be the American mediums, perhaps the Soviet heavies, going up the KV line through to the IS-4, I want to say. But that's never been a policy before. That's never been a factor when Wargaming has placed tanks in the tech tree. They've not really cared that much about it, or they've only paid lip service to it. So why it's important now and for this specific tank, I don't know. I also think it's a load of old cobblers, because if you'll recall, every single Soviet medium in the fucking game has a low to medium alpha, high DPM gun with acceptable to good gun handling. Every single fucking one. People might bring up the D25T gun choice on the T44 as an example against that, but I would counter that with saying you're wrong and bad and shouldn't be using the D25T on the T44, because it is objectively a fucking terrible choice. Yeah, good players can make it work. Broseph can make it work very well. I've seen him do it, but even then, it's more of a look what I can do thing. It's an actual handicap, that gun on that tank. You are working uphill to get the same results somebody with the 100mm LB1 would be getting without much effort. And so I don't think that's a legitimate gun choice, and I don't think that's a legitimate argument. So the whole consistency thing, I think that's bullshit. I don't see where that's coming from. I think they're just making excuses to cover their ass, quite frankly. Yeah, I just wanted to squeeze that one in before I forgot it. So I will cut this here, and yeah, can't guarantee frequent World of Tanks content, but we'll see how we go. Armor content will definitely be frequent. That will be the mainstay of my channel, probably going forwards for the foreseeable future. See you later. Thanks for watching.
Your candle burned out long before your legend ever did.